This week's Design Chat is brought to you by Mustache Wax, new and improved with leak-proof tube for pocket convenience. And by Soul Glow. Just let your soul glow. Just let it shine through. And by Chad Rubel, who hacked a connect so his mother, who just had a stroke, could email again. No joke there, that guy's awesome. Hello and welcome to Design Chat, the best live design discussion on the internet. I'm your host, Ryan McGovern. On Twitter, I'm at Hoopajube and at Design Chat. Every once in a while, we get together with some of the coolest people from the design community, and we talk, and we share, and we do amazing things. Man, I got to come up with a better intro, because every time I screw that up, I try to think of something cool, and I'm just not that fast on my feet. And maybe I got to drink a little bit more before. But this week, we are talking to the Ryan.
Thank you. One-man applause. I appreciate it.
I try to get at least 10 cheesy jokes into the chat every week, so that counts as one. Cool. Not only because you're an amazingly talented designer and creative director extraordinaire, but you had become recommended, and someone reached out on Twitter, at LC Designing on Twitter, reached out, and actually the same person also gave me like this whole list of really interesting people that we need to check out. But yeah, so they reached out and they were like, "Hey, the Ryan Forward, he's ace, man."
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm not really worth it, but we should preface the show with sometimes we talk to cool designers in the community, other times we just talk to this guy.
And then there's today. Yeah, that'd go well. Start off by completely using the guest on the show. Although I tend to make it pretty much every show completely awkward and disturbing. That's just my sensibility.
Well, that's good. I like that sensibility. That's appropriate for me.
So, okay, the first thing we always do is we say, give us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Okay, every time I'm asked this question, it's very difficult for me to answer because I'm not really the type of person who speaks well about himself, I guess. But I guess I've been a designer for I guess over 14 years now, and I've designed for a lot of big name clients. I'm sure it was in the intro. I really enjoy designing for smaller clients because I think that design these days tends to have the biggest effect and value for smaller companies and smaller clients. I was former creative director of Deviantart for 4 years. I've been a member of that community since it opened. And right now I'm working as designer / creative director / chief creative officer / intern at PivotShare, which is a new startup that does monetized video hosting. It's pretty cool. We have a lot of good stuff that we're working on right now. I don't know, I also do a ton of logo work, a ton of icon work. I guess I've become rather popular as of late for my sandwich and food icons. A lot of people have been getting plenty of attention for those, which is always appreciated. And I don't know what else to say. That's it.
Well, you hit on subjects I want to talk about tonight, about some interesting stuff that you've done. The first of which is definitely Deviantart, because that's one of those websites, one of those properties that personally I haven't had a lot of experience with, but I knew that a lot of my friends had, and that it seemed to be, my impression of it was that it was a discussion, a lot of chatter, a lot of sharing of ideas, and creative work, right? Sometimes stealing, sometimes sharing, sometimes solving. Good, bad, or indifferent, it seemed to be a very powerful hub of creative discussion.
Yeah, I think that you probably explained that in the nicest way possible. People have a wide variety of things to say about DeviantArt, from extremely positive to extremely negative. And I always found that both are in many ways true and warranted. On the positive side, the website is an extraordinary community of creative-minded people who create artwork of all sorts, and people who love art. Seen there amongst artists, including myself, has been phenomenal. you can go to almost anybody's gallery who's been there for just a couple of years in their skill set. And having the capability of looking at something that they did 2 years ago or 5 years ago and then what they're doing today, you can actually map out their growth, which is something that you don't really see on any other creative website. Most creative websites are geared specifically towards acting as like a portfolio, like show off your astounding work. But DeviantArt somehow critique each other, and they help each other get better, and they look at what other people all over the world are doing. And so in that regard, it's no wonder it's one of the top websites in the world. But on the negative side, whenever you get any sort of large-scale website where everybody in the community has sort of an equal foothold and an equal weighting of attention, you're going to get people who will steal or will cause trouble or will, act like children, because some of them are very young. And a lot of the negative stereotypes or opinions of the site stem from a combination of the way some of the younger people, more immature people act, and also what you see on the front page, which until recently, when they updated some of their algorithms, would feature a lot of anime and nude photography. So it's sort of photography, which it definitely was not, but that's how people tend to look at it now on any social network. But the difference between DeviantArt and like a Facebook art, like I said, is sort of equal in a way. So you're going to see the fruits of their labor showing up all over the place, everywhere you look. Whereas on Facebook and Twitter, it's very much about you selecting specifically what you want to see in social networks. But on DeviantArt, sort of everything is right in front of you at all times, and you take the good with the bad. But I think that the way that the site has grown has turned it into one of the premier places where people can start out with just an interest in art and grow to become artists who have gone to work for some of the biggest like comic book companies like Marvel or video game companies like Ubisoft. It's really remarkable what you can find there.
So many subjects to talk about. In that is the most interesting is the social growth that's happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were there from 2008 to 2012.
Yes.
And the growth that you experienced started to about currently 22 million subscribers or users. Is that correct?
It was actually, no, it was about 3 million when I started, and then about 23 million now. It may be 24. Yeah, that's a huge growth. And I think that growth came from a combination of things. First off, when DeviantArt began, the internet was still very new. It was still in its infancy in many ways. And the people who actually remain very, very passionate about the site. And those people started bringing in virally their friends. And just like any sort of viral video or anything viral on the net, that stuff tends to expand over time as friends share with other friends, share with other friends. But then when I came on board, I think I came on at like the perfect time, because a lot of stuff was happening in that company where there were a lot of features that were being developed. There were a lot more people being hired who could really think about how do we a design team to help market and grow the company as well. And all of this stuff sort of created a perfect storm of a lot of very smart people focusing on growing this outside of DeviantArt, like it didn't buy Google AdWords or anything like that. It was all really word of mouth, and all of the marketing happened internally, getting community members to stay active, trying tests or new features, etc.
So you started to answer one of the questions I was going to attack, is your role and responsibilities while you were there. You started to say that you were charged with building a team that was going to be responsible for the marketing. I want to hear about that experience. Was it completely from the ground up? What were the influences? What were the things you were looking for in building a team? How big did it end up becoming? All of that.
Okay. Well, when I first started there was really just an assembly of freelancers, people just around the world available, and that doesn't make a good design team. You can't rely upon anybody when they're across them in person. So right when I started, I knew that we needed to form something in hand. Patrick Eager, who I've known for a long time, and he's an excellent designer, and he was finishing up school, and I thought, what better place to put him than with me at this company to help me build this team. Mm-hmm. And from there on, I grew the team to something like seven or eight people. I always forget the number because it fluctuated, but all of these people were probably the most talented people that I've ever had the privilege to work with. And collectively, we were responsible for branding the site, marketing every one of its products, redesigning a lot of features, pages, functionality, etc., providing input to the developers, and kind of almost every creative thing that needed to be done went through my team. That is head up by a guy named Ian, who's also an extremely talented person. When I started there, I was charged with building a team that could handle the growth and also contribute to the growth of the site. But like a lot of situations, you hop into it not really knowing what you're getting yourself into, and hoping for the best. And so I did the best that I could, and I think that what I came out with was really a remarkable team. And I'm so proud of what I was able to build while I was there.
We talk about the different types of professional creative jobs that people take, and the pros and the cons. This particular situation sounds like a compare, but it's unique in the fact that the company itself, is its root is in the creative arts. Most likely at the time, and still is the employees in that type of company are going to be younger. So the environment is going to be very different than a lot of in-house jobs. So I'm curious to hear about the creative relationship with it, with the business end of the people who are there, and how you sort of needed to navigate that.
Well, like any company, there are people within the company who are navigating that I don't even know what you would call it, but it was sometimes difficult to navigate. Working with the people who understood it was always quite easy. It was a lot. It was difficult. It became a teaching exercise that they're around and help them grow to understand and appreciate the value of design. And I think that's true for a lot of in-house design groups, where you will encounter people in the company who love and appreciate design and maybe are designers or really understand the value that it brings to a company, and then other people who just think that you put makeup on a pig, right? You just pretty up the crap that the developers build, and that's all you're there for, is to pretty it up so that people can swallow it, right? I worked with both there. I got along really well with everybody, though, whether they appreciated it or not, fortunately. But in terms of how you balance, it was difficult. I do think that DeviantArt offered a group of employees who understood and valued creativity more than I've experienced at really any other company, design agencies included. But it also came with people who thought that their appreciation of art translated into an understanding of design, as if that they could provide extremely valuable input as if they had done it themselves or something. But the business objectives, I wouldn't say that they got in the way or anything like that, because design is really about solving problems. And so business objectives really always created problems that needed to be solved. And other times they were very difficult and convoluted, and sometimes they just didn't make sense. And I think that that's probably true for any business. But like I said before, at the end of the day, what I was fortunate to be in terms of an environment was a lot of people who love art. Whether they make it or not, they all really loved art. And that was really a big reason why I wanted to work there. Even after being a member of the DeviantArt community for so long, pretty much from its inception, I wanted to work, and it supports the people who create the art in a way that really no other company can of its type.
I want to remind the users watching right now, I don't know why I said that. I watched Tron this last weekend, so I think that's why it's on my brain. The viewers this evening, Design Chatters, but one of the unique things about participating in a Design Chat is that, it's kind of like being at a conference, but you get a personal one-on-one discussion. As a text question, there's a red ask a question button on the right side of the screen. Or if you've got a webcam, you can get on camera and just chat with us. Come discuss. Ask any, tell us about your favorite football team. No, don't do that. Although I do like football. So yeah, okay, so you did the DeviantArt thing. Companies like Apple and I think Nike and really, really large companies. Was that them out of something from DeviantArt? How were those relationships formed?
Companies have been a direct, I would say, cause of my participation in DeviantArt. When DeviantArt was young, still submitting work, and because websites on the net for a very long period of time, the work from DeviantArt tended to stand out. And so I managed to make contacts with design agencies and also other people who were freelancing and people who worked at the project that we're working on. Could you help out in some fashion? So my work with these companies was small in some times and sizable in others. One of the earliest things that I did was for Microsoft, and it was via a company called the Skins Factory, and I think that they're still doing business today. But what they did at the time, and this was a new concept back then, they skinned in the early 2000s on a new media player for Microsoft that was sold. And in retrospect, I think that my skin was really rather terrible. But at the time, I was pretty proud of it. And a while after that, I worked with Yahoo, brand new media player, which I don't think went anywhere. But this was before alpha transparency was like a realistic operating system functionality. So everything at the time had, the aliased edges, right? And they had built something that had alpha transparency as part of the player, as part of this audio player. And this was before iTunes really had like a strong foothold. And so I designed a bunch of player functionality for that. Again, it never went anywhere, but it was a really interesting experience. And pretty much all of or the vast majority of my stuff has been mostly a positive experience that really helped me grow. I mean, maybe I say that a lot, but I think that every project that a designer works on is really about growth, about learning something new, and also making mistakes. And so I think that the Microsoft thing taught me a lot about the way that particular industry works in terms of like software. And I think that really got me interested in software design. It ended up became more of like a software application rather than a casual website experience. And so all of my work tended to focus on the application part of the internet. And I think it really all started with that Microsoft stuff that I mentioned.
We've got a question in the chat room here from It's Chad Chris, who wants to know, what was your first design job out of college, and what?
Well, this question is assuming that I didn't do any design. That I was doing a ton of design work even before I got into college. I've been designing things since I was old enough to work. My very first design job was designed a logo, which much like the Microsoft thing is terrible in retrospect. But I designed a logo, and that was my first paying job. I made $75 to design a logo for some company. I don't remember the name. And it was just like, it was 3D spheres that made like a cube. And I don't know what it was, but the guy wanted that, so I made it. And that was the first paying gig that I had. But if we want to go to the first paying job out of college, that's really hard because right out of college, I went to work for an agent then and there. But while I was in college, I was also with people, the professional, and allowed to work by the United States government.
Legally.
Yeah.
According to my tax return.
Tax returns.
Yeah.
I pay them now, but back then, I don't know.
Back then during your Bain Capital days. First text question jumped in. Karen Jackson wants to know, where/how do you get your creative inspiration, especially when you've hit the
that offer incredible inspiration. First and foremost, there is like Dribble and Honey and Behance, and DeviantArt's fallen down in terms of design. Fallen down is the wrong phrase, but they're not really like a source of design anymore these days, but they're a great source for like artistic inspiration. But for design inspiration, I tend to go on Dribbble, Behance, Honey, and occasionally Logo Pond. Mostly I go to those places because I like to search for keywords related to what I'm working on. So if I'm working on a logo project, I usually have like a big long list of keywords. And sometimes illustrating around those keywords is very simple and straightforward. And other times it's very, very difficult. So I'll go to these websites, type in a keyword, and see what other people are making. And sometimes something will click. It'll give me an idea that I really have to try. So I'll try to execute something. And more often than not, it really results in something that I'm pretty proud of. But this concept of like hitting a wall, I think hitting a wall is like, I think that they just are completely out of ideas, right? There are no more ideas. And I don't think that's obviously not realistic, right? There are always ideas. I think the wall is really just too much focus on one particular problem. And so I think the best way to get away from that wall that you've hit is to go focus on a completely different, completely unrelated problem. Sometimes that'll do it for me. Other times it's, if I have two projects and I'm stuck on one of them, I'll go work on the other one and get my mind completely off that one that I hit the wall on. And that really helps jar my mind. Changing focus from one thing to another is, in my experience, really, really beneficial. And I think that more people should try that instead of focusing and like drilling in on the problem that is in front of them.
In our childhood classroom history courses, we hear about times in history where people believed, society at large believed everything had been invented that will ever be invented. And this is a really fascinating idea to me. That all just live our lives, right? And there's no more progress. I hear it like Kirby Ferguson. It's not he's not giving that message, but he talks about how everything is a remix. Everything is a play off of something that already existed, and there's a lot of truth to that. But I think it's impossible to say at this point that everything's been invented and there's nothing new, there's no new experiences. I don't think that humans in general would be able to retain as much awe and sort of life and discovery as we do for so long. And I need to do something else. I think a lot of that is informed by people telling us, people filling us with preconceived notions of what all that in your career, the sort of naysayer of, there's no original work, there's no original design, there's no original ideas anymore. How much has that influenced you, or have you seen that in your career?
I think a lot of the people that I've worked with haven't really bought into that notion. Although I think that in some ways it's true that everything is based upon a remix is incorrect. I think that what we build upon as a society is the scaffolding that's been placed in front of us, that's been built from prior generations. So every generation that creates something gives us a base from which we can continue to build. And so it's true that like the iPhone, which everybody regards as like the best phone in this astounding invention, is really just based upon a lot of technology that other people have created, right? And the brilliance in the iPhone is that Apple took a bunch of technology that was out there in the world and had an idea and put that technology together in a very particular way, and that became a new thing. And I think that that is a lot of what design is, these days at least. It's taking a lot of stuff that already exists, and your own spin on it, and that becomes new original stuff. These days it's more about the idea than it is per se about the ingredients to the idea. So with any logo design, I didn't invent Adobe Illustrator, and I didn't invent the notion of software, and I didn't invent the computer that I put it together on. But I had an idea, and I clicked a bunch of things, and my idea became real. And so that is my original work, right? Design, though, has this uphill battle that I don't think it will ever overcome, which is that the average person doesn't understand what a designer does. There was something that I read years ago he did to his mother, and he was holding out a magazine spread to his mom and said, "Look, Mom, I made this." And his mom said something like, "Oh, did you take that photo?" And he said, "Well, no." "Oh, did you put together this magazine?" "Well, no." "Oh, no. Well, then what did you do?" And it's sort of like, well, what did I do? I organized it, and I had the idea of how it should be displayed for the maximum informative benefit, for clarity, but that guy's mom isn't going to understand that, right? They're going to look at it like, well, you just put stuff in a place. We all know that it's so much more than that, right? It can really influence the way people comprehend information and the way people live their lives. So going back to the naysayers, right? The people who don't think that there's anything original out there to be done, I think that it's true and false. It's true in the sense that there's a lot of stuff that's been done and we're building upon that, but it's false in the sense that everything that we build upon that old stuff becomes new and original because of the way that we mixed it together and the time and place in which it was done.
Today's date, September 5th, 2012. It's been announced on September 12th that there is an Apple announcement, and their invitations that were sent out had the number 12 and the shadow of number 5, which speculation says that that it's inferring that this is going to be the iPhone 5. Predictions. What I was asked about this earlier today, and my feeling right now is that the major innovations that have happened in the smartphone field, they've already happened. The major innovations, they're finished. Everything from here on out is going to be incremental steps in improving the experience and changing the experience, but it's going to be baby steps. Apple's notorious for playing it, letting out no leaks. Anybody who does is punishable by death. Cases that have come from overseas. So what are your general predictions, about what we might be seeing in this next iteration of the iPhone?
It's going to literally be a brick. You're just going to walk around with a brick with a drawing of an iPhone interface on it, and we'll all live with it, and we'll be damn happy. No, it's fun to speculate on what Apple's going to companies these days. We really only have Apple to look at as being like a bastion of supreme interface. And it sort of said so many things. So at this point, look at what people are writing about it. The people who write about it, of course, really, they have nothing else to write about. So there are like 5,000 articles predicting what the next features are going to be based upon some photographs somebody may or may not have taken in China. I think that it's probably going to be very similar to the current 4S. People say it's going to be taller. Great. I hope it's not too tall, or else maybe it won't fit in my pocket comfortably. Some supposed screenshots show that there are 5 rows of icons now, as opposed to the 4, which, in my view, great. Like most designers, I prefer to have very few icons on my home page. I have tried to narrow down the amount of icons on that home screen of mine to like 5. The 5 that are actually important, not counting the little bar at the bottom, but like 5 that are actually really useful for me, and then the other pages are just the junk, right? The rest of the pages are my junk drawer.
We'll do it together. We'll show the audience what our screens look like.
Hold on, I have stuff open that I have to close because my iPhone is slow.
People who are watching right now, take a screen capture of your home screen by pressing and then post a link to that in the chat if you can, so everybody can see. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
There you go. That's mine.
So you limit what's sitting on there.
Yeah, as much as possible. In fact, I could probably delete some of that crap, but uh, what I try to have on there is just like the stuff that I actually use most frequently, and then every other page is just like the incidentals, right? Like I have some app like car service if I'm in nowhere, and I probably don't need that app, if even that, but I have it there because my thinking ahead of time is maybe I will need it. And I only downloaded it because I had a terrible limousine experience recently where the guy was like extremely unprofessional, and I was thinking, oh, I should just get Uber. I should just have somebody come pick me up. So I got the app, and it sits there now unused, waiting for me to have another experience. So in a way, I hope I have another horrible experience so I can actually.
I've got to put everything I can on that home screen, and then I group them as much as I can. I don't know what it is, but for some reason I don't these different groups. The only method that I've actually invited that in is in the Mac operating system. In Lion, they have a similar interface for launching apps, and so I created different categories that way because for me swiping through here is a little bit more natural, but not being able to see it. I don't know why. That's just me. I don't know. I'm silly like that. But anyway, we're talking about Apple too much. Here's what you should do. It's 9:43. I want to remind the audience that you can ask questions. Click on the red ask a question button on the right. I'd love to hear from you. We've had a couple good ones already. I want to do a reminder right now for everybody that the CUSP conference ticket raffle is still live. It ends on Friday at midnight. So there's still 2 solid days of point gathering that you can do. There's been a lot of entries, a lot of interest, and so for those of you who don't know, the DesignChat is a media sponsor of the CUSP conference, which is happening in Chicago on September 19th and 20th at the Museum of Contemporary Art. It's an amazing sort of life-changing experience, and we're lucky enough to give away 2 tickets to 2 different people. Each ticket is worth $1,750. Not just, you don't just get monetarily value out of this, but there are so many amazing, it's kind of like, they call it the design, creative arts, right? But they don't talk about, it's not like a regular design conference where they're just, it's just rock star designers. No, they bring in, neurosurgeons and people who have been creating limbs for 20 years and are at the forefront of the technology and fake limbs. I'm not using the right term for that. It's totally mind-boggling. Look them up, cuspconference.com, and go to designchat.info and sign up for the raffle. There's still 2 days left. See, there's links. All right. So some of the other projects that you had sitting on your site that I thought were really interesting, Ryan, is how can you not be intrigued by that? And some of the other app icons that you've got sitting up there. Can you tell us some of the stories behind those?
Yeah, well, the first app icon that I actually did was that sandwich. And I made the sandwich because I love sandwiches. And one night I had like a handful of hours to myself where I was like, what the hell am I going to do with myself? I know, I'll make a sandwich app. I've seen people making really interesting app icons for so long, and I thought that I would give it a go. It felt like an interesting challenge. So I made that, and then I sort of got on a roll, and I started making others. And eventually people started noticing that I was making these. And I came upon, first was an app called Basket. That was like the first one who actually paid me. And so I drew a picnic basket app icon. And that was like a grocery list app. Then the bakery thereafter, somebody came to me and said that they have this app that they're working on called Bacon Diet. And as the name may imply, it's all about dieting by eating lots and lots of bacon. They wanted a bacon-centric app icon. And so we talked about the idea, and we came to the conclusion that we should, it was very off-the-wall thinking for the time. Guns, and it was an uphill battle, I will say that. Actually, it was really, I drew so many slices of bacon. That's all of that is actually drawn in Photoshop. I painted it, or whatever you want to call it, in Photoshop. And I drew a lot of bacon. And that grill, the little cast iron thing, For a while, it looked like a plate, and then I realized it should look more like a George Foreman grill. It was actually a lot of fun, but after drawing so much bacon, I actually don't really like to eat bacon anymore. I stared at it for, I think, too long. It's one of those things where I studied bacon so hard so that I could draw bacon that I lost really most of.
I won't even continue that discussion at all. I'm offended so much at that idea at all. There was another to do with social shopping.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that interaction and how that work came about.
That was one of these projects. Most of my projects come out of the blue. People just get in touch with me either through Behance or Dribble or contact on my website and just want to talk about a project. And this was one of those that just came about. And they discussed with me this app that they were working on. I don't really know what's become of the app at the moment, but they discussed with me a lot of ideas that they had. And we went through a lot of projects I've had. And it ultimately came down to that L that I drew out. And I kept trying to simplify this concept because to me, like just drawing a cursive L wasn't good enough. So I kept trying to like simplify it, and that's why it came down to being made of like very simple geometry. Even though it looks very swash-like, it's actually very simple geometry. And then that cut in the middle, I realized like so many things that I could remove that unnecessary that line, that extension between the top loop and the bottom loop, and still have what looked like an L. But the client was a little bit, they really loved that one, but then they wanted to explore other stuff. So it ultimately was used. They went with just kind of like a basic out-of-the-box script font that kind of looks childlike in a way, which was disappointing to me, but that's the way some projects go. But I was extremely happy with what came out of what I had done that they didn't accept. So I'm very happy showing that off. And a lot of people have very positive things to say about it. So I know that it wasn't just me.
Venture with the company you're at now called Pivot Share. You described it earlier as being a video hosting sort of service, or what is that service exactly?
Well, PivotShare is a media monetization site, and we're still expanding upon the idea, but at its core, it's about creators of video and audio content being able, it can be available for purchase, either streaming or subscription-based, or in the future there may be a little bit more support for other concepts like maybe ads. I don't know, we're talking about it, but that we do everything for people. Digital media is growing so rapidly, and there are all of these little services that are popping up. The biggest ones are, of course, the iTunes Store, and there's Netflix, and there's Hulu, right? And that's where you go to get the big name content. If you want like big giant studio productions, you'll go to those places. If you want the social junk, you'll go to YouTube, right? There's a lot of just anybody can submit anything to YouTube, and if you're the producer of really quality content, you don't really have anywhere to go because you're too small usually for like Netflix and iTunes and Hulu, but you want, right? So YouTube is out of the picture. Because YouTube, while they do have a revenue sharing service, you have to have so much popularity, so many views with your content that it becomes extremely difficult for people. People who may have an audience but may not have an audience that's so large that they would get 1 million views on YouTube, for example. So what we're providing is a service that out of the box is a place where a content producer can put their stuff, create a channel, and start sharing it with their existing audience. And we handle all of the payment collection, all of the distribution of media, working on a lot of apps that will stream that content that you either sign up with via pay-per-view or subscription, and a lot of press around it from like TechCrunch and the Next Web. We've gotten a lot of really interesting contacts because of that. And so we're working on a lot of really big stuff right now as a result. So it's very exciting. And the thing that I really like most about the project and the company is that it's really small. There are just 5 of us there right now. I'm the design guy. There are 2 developer guys, and then there's a CEO and a marketing guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're able to get a ton of stuff done. It's not like the bureaucracy that you experience at larger companies where you have to filter all of your stuff through 10 kind of like, I have an idea, here, let me mock it up. Everybody looks at it. We say, hey, that makes sense, and then we make it. And I think that's the way it ought to be. Let's get your ideas out there and see what sticks.
Yeah, Jason Fried of 37 Signals speaks a lot about the idea of running a bootstrap startup and the major benefits that brings along with being able to design your products, improve your products, and change directions, on a dime. And it sounds like that's the model you guys are going after, and it's very interesting. And especially, in this space of sort of media delivery, where it's completely. We're in a time where any industry can be shaken because it's so disruptive. You can do anything you want. If you bring a new model to the table, it can take on and become the new normal. I think we're going to be talking a lot about this idea of, I don't even know if there's a word for it. Maybe I should come up with a word for it and coin it. But essentially, what I'm thinking about is these preconceived notions of how things are supposed to be done, based on how we've been doing them for years and years and years. The media distribution, Wild West. If you can come up with a successful business model and disrupt and become the new normal, it's what I'm thinking about of a word for it is this is the way it's done, to anything's possible, and then this is the new way that thing is done.
Yeah, and I think that in the digital media segment of things, more and more people are latching on to the concept of on-demand, right? That you want to watch it. We've moved from a society that was used to the concept of like appointment television, where shows are on at a particular time and you can't go do anything because your show is on, to a society that is becoming more and more used to getting what they want the second that they want to have it. And as internet speeds increase over time, it's becoming more and more realistic to get higher quality stuff streamed to your devices. And I think that it's also true that there are so many people out there who create astounding content, and I believe that they deserve to be paid for that content. I believe that everybody who creates original, interesting work deserves to be able to make a living off of that work. And lots of people out there, including myself, are perfectly happy paying for that work. I hate cable. I don't know about you. Cable blows. But other services that are online are becoming better and better. Yeah, the good thing about cable, pushing people away from cable into services like Netflix and ultimately PivotShare. We have a lot of really interesting ideas that our competitors aren't doing yet, and we've patented those ideas. And as much as patenting ideas is a little bit under fire lately because of the way Apple's been going about things, our ideas deserve to be patented. And in a handful of months, I think the fruits of our labor will become very apparent. And I think that what I'm working on and what my team is working on at PivotShare will really change the way people consume media. And with any luck, all the people creating great content out there, great video and great audio content, will actually have a platform upon which they can make a living. And that's what I'm hoping for.
That's, I mean, I couldn't be more of a cheerleader for that cause, having done this content. I always dream and sort of talk about how one day it would be great to, make this my full-time job, even though I'll never stop designing, and that's always going to be sort of my passion. But yeah, I think, companies like that, once that takes off, these monolithic distribution companies are, they're going to fade away like a lot of the newspaper companies have, in these old media distributions. Guys, we're 2 minutes away from 10 o'clock. We're going to start wrapping up. If you've got any questions, now is your time to ask them. I want to remind everybody again about the Cusp conference ticket giveaway. Please sign up for that and earn as many points as you can. And let me tell you, I've got a little secret. If you enter things of following DesignChat, following Cusp conference, liking us on Facebook, and all that great stuff, no one has taken advantage yet of the 25-point make a video and post it to YouTube. Is make a video, have someone smile, post it, and then link to it in the post about the ticket giveaway. It's honestly, you could accomplish this in 5 minutes of taking it on. It doesn't have to be a feature length film, and you get 25 points for that as opposed to the 1 or 2 points that you get for following us. So please take advantage of that, and you will have a much better chance of winning. I want to thank you, Ryan, for taking the time. You've got a busy life and family and work, obviously. I'm always grateful when people take an hour of their time to hang out with the design community and just sharing your ideas and your passions and your experiences. Honestly, it's really an honor to be able to spend this time doing so.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Next week, artist, thinker, vandal, trespasser, listener, and lover, and also the current creative director at MailChimp. So that's going to be a great discussion. Please tune in for that. And that's all we got for you guys tonight. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the podcast. Promotion time over.
Bye-bye. Bye, guys.